Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IA's current affair analysis for 1st May 2021. In this video, we'll be dealing with this couple of issues. The rising sun in India-Japan relations. This article is about India-Japan relations after Shinzo Abe, the former Prime Minister of Japan, retired and was replaced by the new Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. So, how would his policy be towards bilateral ties as well as its relation with US and America has been a point of debate whether he will be living up to the expectations set by Shinzo Abe, because Abe was known for his Abenomics, or his idea of economic development by developing partnerships, and this included not just India and US but also the Asia Africa growth corridor during his regime. So, will he be living up to the expectations was the question, because Japan is a major contender for power in the Indo Pacific and also a major partner to develop technologies for the future. In the backdrop of China investing heavily on emerging technologies like Internet of Things, 5G, quantum computing, there is a need for a technological partner with deep pockets and the prowess required to carry out R&D activities in this sector. So Japan is being looked at as one such partner. But will the new leadership maintain the same kind of bilateral ties has been the question. If US and recent Japan trends or the US Japan relations are to go by, it is clearly visible that indeed the new Prime Minister has been living up to the expectations that he had set initially. What are the trends that we can see in US Japan relations? Let us have a look. As we all know, as far as China is considered, it is being considered as a threat rather than a major economic power. Therefore, all the countries, major powers especially, are looking to safeguard themselves from the clutches of China. What are the trends that you can see in anti-Chinese stand exhibited by Japan? In the recent meeting between Mr. Biden and Mr. Suga, the President of United States and the Prime Minister of Japan, if that trends are to go by, they are going to continue this anti-China stance, which was started by the previous President Donald Trump. So, what are the reasons that are forcing these countries to take an anti-Chinese stance? Firstly, we are taking a look at the geopolitical reality. We know that China has been exhibiting a lot of aggression in the South China Sea, in areas like the Taiwan Strait or Senkaku Islands, or the Nine Dash Line controversy in the South China Sea, which is infringing on the rights of the coastal islands in that region. Secondly, we are talking about technological development. As we've already discussed, China is investing heavily on emerging technologies like this. So, to contain the growth of that and to avoid monopolization of Chinese growth, there is a need to develop technologies and mobilize resources for the R&D activities in this region. So, therefore, US and Japan have aligned their interests and also exhibited their vision of free and open Indo-Pacific region. The rationale behind such a reason is that without having a free and open Indo-Pacific region, economic development and inclusive development of all the regions is simply not possible. Access is one of the most important criteria for inclusive development. Therefore, technology is the second wing of the foreign policy of Japan with respect to China. So, if this trend is to go by, what can India expect? India can definitely expect a continuation of the bilateral ties from the times of Abe. So, what are the major dimensions of India-Japan bilateral ties? Even in the Indian context, Japan has expressed solidarity with India when the Indo-Chinese Galwan Valley conflict was going on. In this conflict in the Galwan Valley, Japan opined that there is a need to rebalance the security policy against China, and that Japan can actually help India in rebalancing the security policy against China. So India's clashes with China in Galwan have turned the public opinion in favor of a more confrontational China policy. Therefore, this is also helping the cause. Secondly, we are talking about technology. Again, there is a huge scope for India to use Japan as a partner in developing technologies, because we have a huge market. Even militarily, India and Japan joined together to carry out certain military exercises, and again, India signed the acquisition and cross service agreement with Japan, which is a sort of a logistics agreement, which was followed up with a 2+2 ministerial meetings. That is, the defense minister and the foreign affairs minister of both the sides will meet and discuss the agenda of the bilateral ties in the times coming forward. When it comes to the technological front, India has been raising this issue of data localization. What do you mean by data localization? Basically, data is considered to be the new oil or the source of revenue for the global economy as we move towards what is famously called as Industrial Revolution 4.0, which is characterized by technologies that we have already discussed. That is the reason why China is also investing heavily in these technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, etc. So the major factor is data. Where is this data being localized? Whether it is put in India or whether it is mirrored and a copy of that is taken elsewhere. What is the legal mandate given to companies on this aspect? India does not have a law on this, and it is yet to sign certain cyber security agreements like Budapest Convention. So all these reasons have been acting as certain roadblocks which can be addressed in the future. Thirdly, when we're talking about the economic ties with Japan has always been a major partner in our infrastructural development. For example, take the bullet train project. Japan has been financing this at a very, very low interest. So Japan can again play a major role in India's vision of Make in India. And if you take a look at various projects, like say for example Japan Industrial Townships, they have a huge scope in areas like Northeast and strategic islands of Andaman and Nicobar. Since they are a very trustworthy partner owing to its legacy after the Second World War of not taking up militarization or any mass gathering of weapons, India has always developed positive ties with Japan. Also, Japan has an aging population. So it is offering visas to skilled workforce, skilled Indians to work in Japan directly. That will also enhance people to contact as well. And lastly, China can be contained if Japan becomes a major partner. Also, Japan can be made a major partner in regional groupings like BIMSTEC in the future, so that it leverages the technological and economic prowess of Japan in the region. Also, we can use Japan in our Act East policy, making Japan a major industrial partner for development in the Northeast as well, and furthering this objective. So there is a lot of scope, especially for the third world countries like Sri Lanka, Myanmar in this region. Also, one more thing is that if the issue of Myanmari refugees influx into India increases, and if there is a possible outburst of emotions associated with the crisis that is happening in Myanmar because of the military coup, even in that case, Japan can become a partner to raise our voice against the inhuman treatment which is being meted out to the citizens of Myanmar. So these are multifold benefits after the new Prime Minister came into the picture. So that is the gist of this article. The big glacial melt. We know that glaciers are actually the source of fresh water in our world. When these glaciers melt, what is the obvious result? An increase in the mean sea level. What happens if there is an increase in the mean sea level? The low-lying areas will get submerged. So this is a long-term impact. But a recent study, which is called the Accelerated Global Glacier Mass Loss in the Early 21st Century. This is a study which said that if glaciers are indeed melting at the current rate, the entire cryosphere will end up melting by 2050. What is cryosphere? It is that part of the earth which has this ice and glaciers in its purest form. If this is a reality, what it means to India is the question. Not just India, what it means to the world. For example, if you take low-lying areas like Bangladesh, if the business as usual approach continues and the glaciers continue to melt, low-lying areas like Bangladesh will be submerged completely. Secondly, what happens to the riparian states or the areas where these rivers flow through? Because glaciers are the major source of perennial rivers like the Indus system or the Ganges system or even the Brahmaputra system, which act as the lifeline for at least 40% of our population in India. Most of this population will see severe water crisis. This is because of the impact of climate change. The non-stop pollution that is happening in the northern part of the country and elsewhere in the world is definitely going to impact this glaciers. We have seen these results in the case of Shimla, where a couple of years ago in summer, Shimla saw a severe water crisis, and similar to what happened in Durban in South Africa, it was already declared that within a few number of days the entire city would run out of water. But however, thankfully the situation has been revived after some time. This is the scenario. Now, how do we deal with this? There are no shortcuts to handle this mismanagement of glaciers. What can we do is a question that cannot be answered in a single line. It requires a multi-stakeholder effort, and this multi-stakeholders should work in different areas to ensure that the climate change is contained. We have to regulate our industrial activity. We have to move towards a post-carbon economy. We have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We have to take up structural and non-structural changes in our infrastructural needs in the region. Otherwise, you have seen the case of Uttarakhand. In 2013, there were floods. It led to massive devastation. Landslides in this region are very common. Again, this will lead to economic loss as well as human loss as well. So disasters would increase. The intensity of disasters will increase manifold. In order to contain all this and save countries like India and Bangladesh, which could face severe water and food crisis because we depend on water for food production. This is what the future looks like. It is very grim, and it is time for entire humanity to act together. Just to put things into a context, I am taking out a statistic from this article and say that nearly 83% of the glacial loss is happening just in 7 regions, and that includes the Himalayas as well. Himalayan ecosystem is crucial for survival of India and Bangladesh. So that is the gist of this article.